show for The Shining by Stanley Kubrick. I almost forgot it. Written by Stephen King. 1980, the film came out, and it wasn't written by Stephen King?
He wrote the book. He did not write the
Yeah.
screenplay.
Oh, sorry. Who wrote the screenplay? I didn't write that down.
It was Stanley Kubrick and I think Diane Johnson.
Okay.
If I remember right.
I guess I did.
We
I
might
pulled
be
it up
jumping
too,
ahead,
guys.
but I think Rumja is alluding to the fact that Stephen King is not a fan of this movie.
Is that right?
Oh, he's very unhappy with it.
He does not. Yeah, he has issues with it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think if you think there's a better time for it, then we can get to it. Then I was like, for this movie in particular, just as I think I said something this morning when I finished it this morning again, which is a weird movie to watch at like 6 a.m, by the way. But this movie has had so many accolades now. There's every bit of trivia about it. Like, so I'm not going to go through, it was nominated for the 13th Best Scream Award in 2002. Like, all that kind of stuff that we did for the other movie, like, don't care. It's a highly regarded, well-regarded movie.
But it wasn't at the time. Originally, it was not necessarily as highly regarded.
Meaning like it got bad reviews or something?
I think it got mixed reviews, and it was also nominated for, I think, some Razzie Awards, which is like crazy to think about now.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I read that Shelley Duvall was a winner of a Razzie for it, and then I don't know if we'll get into it, but it was not an easy filming process, and so the Razzie folks didn't know that at the time, and they felt bad, so they like rescinded the Razzie Award for her.
Yeah, that's
solid move.
Shocking to hear because, like, and I'm sure we'll get to it, but it's hard to watch her performance in this, and not even really knowing like if she was, I don't want to say like she was getting like hit by like Jack Nicholson or anything, but she looks a wreck. So to be like, oh no, her performance sucks, like, whatever it is, it seems pretty believable to me, but So I guess easiest way to start with Shining for me anyway is my first exposure to it. Has anyone read the book? I have not read the book, but I really want to now. You have?
I read it before I saw the movie.
No way.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Like
I was like in the like 13, 14 time frame. Like I was like
your age, you mean?
Yeah. I was.
Oh wow.
Well, it's like I read the book for Jurassic Park before I saw the movie, and I looked back on it, I'm like, well, Jurassic Park came out in 1993, so I was 10 when I read Jurassic Park, and looking back on it, I'm like, how did I get through that book? Because there's like large chunks of that book that are like incomprehensible science talk by Michael Crichton, and I'm like, I must have just kind of skipped through that and not cared. But I remember like thinking, wait a second, that guy died and that guy lived in the book, and then, I remember, the one thing I remember is like the velociraptors in the book. They describe velociraptors pulling at the intestines of one of the scientists, and I'm like, well, that wasn't in the movie. What the heck?
Yeah.
So, but I don't remember when I saw the movie, but I remember reading the book beforehand, and so there are differences in the movie and the book that are, some of them are somewhat large, but yeah, it definitely changes the experience.
In The Shining or Jurassic Park or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. I was talking specifically about The Shining in this case.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Jurassic Park is something I read the book for the first time within the past couple of years and like loved it, but see how there is the difference, but nothing that would have made me mad. Like, oh, they didn't have this, or like the little chicken dinosaurs aren't in it. It was such a great movie.
Yeah.
That it translated really well. And just a quick aside for this, having not read the source material and not really knowing too much about Stanley Kubrick, I may have only seen this and Clockwork Orange, but having not really liked that movie the first time I saw it, way too young, and I've only seen it once since because I read the book, and that's like one of the most accurate translations or whatever interpretations of that of like source material literature or whatever to a movie. Like, that's crazy. So if you're saying this one's kind of diverted so much that the original author doesn't like it, is weird for me to hear, but I would that makes sense to me because this movie makes almost no sense.
Yeah, I was talking to Stacy about it. Stacy's read it, and
okay, oh cool.
And reading up on the kind of the lore of the movie and all, because there's so much lore with this movie. It's not just a movie. It's not just a movie based on a book. It's like this highly scrutinized, analyzed. It's like the ultimate, fandom kind of production where there's just, heaps of people out there that have like looked at every square inch of this movie and analyzed it to the nth degree. But from what I read on it, one of the biggest issues Stephen King had with it was that Jack Nicholson's character is not a good man. I think we'll all agree there. And it's very clear, pretty much up front, that he's not a good man.
I had that written down for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know in talking with you guys a little bit about this, Troy, I know you kind of called out like, man, I feel for you dads out there that this is kind of a tough watch. Well, I guess according to Stephen King, he does not start out as a bad person in the book. And so that was a key change that Kubrick wanted to make, that like maybe he was taken in more by the hotel and it's whatever's going on in the situation, because he's more of a fallible character and more easily swayed to evil because he doesn't start out as a good character. And I again, not having not read the book, I think that's like an interesting choice to make. Again, but I haven't read the book, so I don't know. I'm just going from opinions of others.
That's a cool reason for the director or the author to not like it, though. Like,
yeah,
because I have, in my 5 takeaways, that's one of my takeaways. Like, is there any arc in this? Like, he is, as soon as he's taking the interview, he's kind of like insane. He's off-putting. Like, what? And my first introduction to this movie was, I don't know, in high school or whatever, watching with a big group, so I don't have a lot of memory about it. But I don't remember him being just a shitbag, excuse my language, from the get-go, but he's pretty much a bum from the get-go, and he only gets worse. He doesn't get, there's no redemption. So if there was any sort of, he's kind of a good guy, and like they're showing moments of a loving father or a caring husband, he seems like he hates his wife and he hates his child from the get-go.
Your first exposure to this, Troy, was watching the Simpsons Treehouse episode.
Yes. Which that might be the best translation of a source material to parody. Because goodness gracious, is it good?
Very good.
But yeah, so that's cool. I certainly didn't know that, and that makes a lot of sense. Why an author would not appreciate someone making their character just bad from the get-go.
Well, and you think about it, like an author, their characters are like the backbone of the story they're trying to tell. Typically, not necessarily the case with film, and so like I could see that, taking that personal. Like that's the character I wrote. You ruined my character.
Especially since it's an author, and Stephen King is an author, so it's kind of like almost autobiographical.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that until like, oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man.
This is a tough one to like know where to start. It's a wild movie.
Yeah, that's what I kind of already said, like my first introduction to it was watching, and rest in peace Shelley Duvall, why we even picked this movie, kind of as an interjection, which I'm glad we did, and I'm glad that it seems people have different takes on it, more so than our first movie, which was just kind of like a fun romp, even though I remember Matt Jones not liking it. But
I didn't say I did. Well, no, I didn't.
He hated it.
I did not say I did not hate it. That's true. I didn't like it. That's fair.
I was just quoting the critic.
But
I hated it.
Stinks.
It stinks.
So I watched it in a group setting in high school or maybe very, very early college, and I remember being very scared about it because it can be a pretty frightening movie, and it's all about ghosts, and we watched it late at night and whatever, and people had pumped it up like it's such a scary movie. But it didn't stick with me too much I hadn't watched it again until, I don't know, a week or two ago when we picked it. I've never read the book, and to Matt Jones's point, like, I've seen parodies more than the actual movie. Like, it's such an insanely famous movie to parody, the blood elevator scene, that kind of thing, So revisiting it, and people speak very highly of it, like with a lot of passion, like, oh, I love this movie, I would recommend this movie. And like my take after my first impression back in like high school or whatever, and then now, like, I don't know. I didn't. This was not an enjoyable movie to watch. I was almost like dreading watching it again to take notes. I'm really glad I did, but yeah, hard watch. And I don't. I'm glad it has its reputation for a film as like creation, but as far as like a story or something, like, nah, dude, it's a bummer, bro. Which I was trying to get away from here, but I didn't. I don't remember it being such a bummer boat. I thought it was more just a ghost story, and it's way more than that. And now we can kind of, yeah. And anyone's others. Did you guys watch it when you were young, Matt Jones? You said you read the book when you were. That's pretty young to watch or read a horror book.
Yeah, I think I don't remember. I know I was in my teens, and so it must have been like in the mid to late '90s.
After you saw The Simpsons too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I had seen the Simpsons episode based that parodied it. Which now watching that again, which I didn't see the whole thing of that you sent that link to watch like big chunks of it. I was like, it is incredible how good of a parody this is. It's like the Simpsons family fits in so well, and all the stuff fits in so well for this movie. But yeah, I remember reading the book and seeing the movie and not really caring for the movie. Not because I don't think I remember reading anything about Stephen King not liking it, but I remember reading the book and coming away with it, and there are things in the movie that happen that I was like, what? Like, this is so dumb. And so like I'm sure so the big one for me was Scatman Crothers' character. Mm-hmm. It's like you set up a little bit of The Shining and such, but then like he's just like randomly in throughout so much of it, and in the book he comes back in and helps them eventually figure out how to like get away. He helps Shelley Duvall's character, I forget what her name is.
Who's Scatman? Who are you talking about?
Oh, the Scatman Crothers is the
Mr.
like,
Tully?
housekeeper. Yeah, the other guy that's around that has
the only other character in the movie, basically.
Well, there's other ones.
I probably didn't need to ask.
But in the book, he does not get an axe to the chest after traveling hundreds of thousands of miles to come help them out, which was like, to me, and I remember being younger and I was like, what the hell? Like, why was he even coming? What was the point? Like, the point is, okay, like, Danny used his shine, or like, so they have that link. But then he just comes up, he runs, and then he gets killed. Like, yeah. Just pointless. Like, absolutely pointless character after, like, he could have just not been there. Everything else could have gone just the same way. Nothing, like, you take all of his scenes out, take him getting killed out, what changes?
I don't know.
Jack Nicholson actually is willing to kill somebody. He's willing to chop up his wife and
I know,
son.
but we need him for all the Shining stuff,
No. You need him in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But after that, once he's explained the shine, I guess it's like, oh, well, you can't just have the character explain the shine and then
you
go
can't
away.
have no characters get killed in a horror movie.
I mean, but can you?
Spoilers.
Well, technically Jack Nicholson got killed. So he died of hypothermia. I'll put it that way.
Right.
But
that is true, right? He's the only one that gets killed. Technically, I mean, like, there's ghosts, of course, maybe. I don't know. We'll get into that, I'm guessing. But he's the only one that gets, like, actually killed during the movie, right?
Well, during the timeline of the movie, yeah.
Okay,
all right.
You
got the axe and you got the froze to death. That's it.
Oh, yeah. Man, we're getting to spoilers, like, really early today.
I mean, if you're watching this, you're probably going to get spoiled.
I don't know who would be checking in on this who has not yet seen The Shining. Ooh, I'm really curious if I should watch that. I'll listen to. Yeah.
I mean, early on, I'd say no, don't bother. If you're going to talk on the podcast with us, then sure. But otherwise, like, I would not. I would recommend 10 other movies before I'd recommend this one.
I had a very different, I think, reaction to this movie than you guys. I have not read the book, and I'd only seen the movie once, okay. And it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I probably have been subjected to a lot of spoofs and references and things like that. I haven't noted there's a Jurassic Park reference that I think Jurassic Park borrows from this movie. We'll when we get to it, I'll bring it up.
Oh, now
This
I'm
movie
super
to
curious.
me is very much a form over content kind of movie. Like, and I'm probably taken a little bit by the like cinephile infatuation that people have with this. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. But I just found it so interesting to watch, and I didn't find it very scary. I mean, obviously, once you know how it ends, the movie is inherently less scary. But there's a sense of dread. There's the tone combined with the music. I have it written down like 50 times in my notes. The follow shots. The follow shots are so effing cool. How they're like stabilized, perfect center, and then follow when they make turns. You know, from the big wheel to the running through the maze to the Shelley Duvall's character happens frequently in the movie. It's such a cool shot. And it's an unsettling movie for sure. I don't know that I'd call it a fun movie, but it's so interesting. And the other thing, Stacey and I were just talking about this before we joined, but how it's kind of hard to place when you watch this. Like, how old is this movie? It was made in 1980. It could have come out in 1965, or it could have come out. I don't know. It feels, I guess, a little old to be like 1990, but there's kind of a timeless element to it that makes it hard to nail down when it was made, and I think that's very Kubrickian. He's a unique director that there's not really been other people that have been able to mimic what he's done very well.
Well, it couldn't have been made in the last like 10 years because otherwise they would all have cell phones. They
don't.
been...
But that
True.
I know it was shot in Mount Hood. Like, there are places here, a lot of campgrounds that I go to, like, no cell service, like within like a mile or two. And this is like national, the national parks and stuff like that. It's like, they just don't have them out here. So yes, but also I didn't really think about that, Jeremy, but I totally agree, because now that I'm trying to place it, like, did they ever say what year this was supposed to take place, or do we just assume it's 1980?
I think it's supposed to be in the 70s.
Okay.
I think I don't know, maybe, again, I've watched so many and read so many things on this, I can't, it's almost like I don't have original thoughts on it anymore, but
Sure.
But yeah, like the whole movie up into the kind of the final 30 minutes where everything escalates, I almost think is more interesting than the final 30 minutes. Setup and the other thing is, like, I kind of don't really even care about The Shining or whatever that is. The book, from what I understand, leans very much into it. Stacey was talking about how it explains it a lot more. There's still mystery, of course, but I just find the whole mystery of the place combined with the ending, combined with, like, we really don't know why any of this is taking place.
Indian
And
Burial
just
Ground.
yeah, and just that sense of dread and unpleasantness.
That's the explanation, isn't it?
What's that?
At the very beginning, they built it on an Indian burial ground, which
Right.
is the same
That's
thing as
true.
Which I
Poltergeist,
thought was,
right?
I was about to say, I thought that was a poltergeist thing, but I didn't realize it was a Shining thing first.
Well, because they say it
And
really
it's a Pet
quickly.
Cemetery thing too.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Pet Sematary, yeah.
It's probably been in a lot of things.
I think, and not even getting into notes, I think it's a line dropped by whoever not the owner
The manager,
of the hotel.
like the general manager.
Yeah.
That guy did a great selling point on why you should take that job.
Oh my. Okay.
I should
Can we,
let you.
Can we talk about this? For all of we're going into like the setup, right? There are things I really like about the setup. I think Danny is like set up really, really cool. Like, I like Danny as a character in the beginning, and then they just kind of like forget about him like in the second half of the movie, and it all becomes Jack Nicholson. But let me tell you, I hear so much stuff about Stanley Kubrick, and especially like you think about like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Stanley Kubrick doesn't explain anything, right? It's a big, beautiful thing. You read into it, whatever you're gonna read, and then you watch this movie, and like there are chunks of it that are like, okay, I don't know, like you have to kind of read into it a little bit, but the setup, like who in that, like, yeah. So one more thing, like 7 years ago, the prior caretaker took an axe and chopped his wife and kids up. It's like, well, I'm not going to do that. That's Jack Nicholson. I'm not going to do that. And then it's like, okay, so yeah, so we can kind of expect in the third act he's going to try and chop his wife and kids up. Like, it's how explicit do you need to be? It's not like, oh, Danny used. You could have taken that part out. Danny uses The Shining and said, "Did something terrible happen here to the housekeeper dude?" And then like he sees the image of the girls and they're chopped up, and he's like weird. And then like somebody else can discover something about like, oh, the previous caretaker, like, whoa, what happened here? And like they don't. There could have been like less explicit dialogue that explains it, and more like you could have taken that just cut that right part right out. And guess what? The movie would work just as functionally well. Like you didn't need to know that the guy had chopped up his wife and kids earlier. Like it could have been like, oh, you see these girls and they're chopped up. Danny sees those visions, and then later on, Jack Nicholson is asked by that guy. He's like, you really should. Danny's trying to bring people here that shouldn't be here. You should probably take care of that situation, and it would lead into it a little bit more. It's like it's so explicit that it literally throws me. I'm like,
I thought it was kind
come
of almost
on.
intended to be funny.
Well, then why? Then it shouldn't be in this movie. It should not. You should not put in the movie like, hey, other guy killed his wife and kids with an axe, and then at the end of the movie, that guy, like one of your main characters, tries to kill his wife and kids with an axe.
If you haven't seen this movie though before, are you automatically going, well, that's probably going to repeat itself? I would probably think like, well, what if is that guy still here, or is the ghost of him going to haunt them? Or I wouldn't automatically jump to like the main character is going to follow in the footsteps of the prior killer. To me personally, I'm like, oh, what? Like, where is this going? What is that? That means this place is haunted. Something bad happened. Hundreds of scary movies start with something bad happened here long ago, and then there's going to be ghosts or something. But I can't think of very many movies where like ultimately the main character becomes the killer that was described in the first 15 minutes of the movie. I don't know, maybe.
That's fair. All right.
But again, this is like one of those hindsight kind of things. Depending on how you take with the movie, like you might find the initial setup interesting or telegraphing what's to come, I guess. But
I mean, I think both of your points. Like, trying to think them through. Absolutely. Like now, after seeing the movie 3 times and seeing the parodies, Matt Jones, I'm like, yeah, you're kind of right. That's a pretty weird telegraph. Maybe it was a studio note, but then Jeremy, I'm like, okay, if you have no frame of reference, like, yeah, okay, like,
that's
okay,
fair.
Who is haunting this house? Not because we were afraid of the ghosts, not the monster inside us, right? So I'm with it.
And one other thing I want to add is just like look at the appearance of the guy who's welcoming him there. He's got a big American flag on it. There's something very comical about the way he's dressed, and it's fairly clear that Jack Nicholson is not what you'd call the ideal candidate. So it's kind of like you basically got probably the only person that would take the job, and then you're going to present them with that could potentially scare them away. Are they a captive audience at that point? It's the whole scene. I agree is strange.
Well, to me, it's funnier to me looking back at the parody of The Simpsons, where Smithers is telling Mr. Burns like, shouldn't we tell him the last 3 caretakers have gone crazy and killed their family? It's like, what? I don't think that's going to happen. Like, that to me is funnier than a guy explicitly saying, well, yeah, that happened a few years back.
I've never seen that Simpsons thing you guys are referencing.
It is. We'll have to save that to the end because it is exquisitely good. It is so perfect.
Yeah, but I mean, I do have written in my notes, like, having seen it so long ago and not really knowing what to expect, like, I found that whole scene a little bit tense because, like, I know, of course, that he's going to kill his or attempt to like kill them at the end, but like, how did this guy tell him that? And like, he straight up has to tell, like, I have to tell you this, so I'm going to just drop it in here in the end.
It's part of the job disclosure.
Yeah, but like it's after he says, like, it's isolating up here, they can really get to people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then like, oh yeah, and this happens. Like, ooh, that's got to be a hard thing to say. And I don't know, I found that guy to be a good actor, so it's cool. Again, I thought this movie was going to be a dud. I was dreading actually talking about it. It's like, how can you really talk about The Shining? But 3 different people, 3 different like slight interpretations of just one scene. But leading up to that, and I'm with you, like, we're already through the introduction. It's like, people talk about the helicopter shots, all the beautiful scenery going in. I can't remember where it said it was shot, like between Montana and I think Oregon are the two main exteriors. Really quick, one of my takeaways from it, just so as we're talking about it, I had no idea the only stuff that's real are the exteriors. Everything inside was sets built.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Blew my flippin'. I still like. I haven't watched it since learning that while doing this little research, but like, I still can't believe that those weren't like that lodge was not a real lodge in a hotel. It's like, no, they built that somewhere in like England or something, wherever they did.
That's pretty great.
Or Oregon. Yeah, crazy. But anyway, yeah, well-known introduction shot with the helicopter. Still beautiful to this day. All of that. We talked through the interview. It's very dry. I noted there's no music. Nothing really odd. The tragedy of, I guess, 1970 calls home. And and this is after that, we're introduced to his wife and Danny for the first time, right? Like, somewhat during the interview, they're eating sandwiches, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time we're introduced right off the bat. Like, he knows that he got the job already, or he's talking to
Tony.
It's so funny that you said like we forget about him halfway through the film, or like because I was like I can't even remember his name. You're totally right, even though it's supposed
Danny.
to be
He's Danny and Tony.
Tony. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Doc.
And Doc. So yeah, that was like the first kind of like I don't know, like it's still just unsettling. It's like an unsettling watch because there's a lot of I watched with my earbuds, and yeah, the Foley and the sound effects for this movie is just crazy. Lots of high pitched, like it's making you uncomfortable and edgy, and I'm just like. I literally had to like turn it off and take off my earbuds. Like, this is making me like uncomfortable. Like, I'm not enjoying my experience at all. And like, what a cool thing to do. Like, that was probably his intention, I'm guessing, right?
I'm not a Kubrick expert, but the sound mixing in the ones that I've seen, at least, like for instance, A Clockwork Orange, there's a lot of sudden unpleasant sounds.
Okay.
And that juxtaposed with periods of silence too.
Yes.
It's almost like Kubrick is using like sound as an extra character or something. Because I don't know I can't remember what happens at 24 minutes. Unpleasant wheel sounds.
Yes.
The movie's audio mixing is wild throughout. I wrote.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I made a note of those wheels too. Like it's like what's gonna happen? Like I don't know. Even after seeing it, like do the ghosts show up now? I can't remember, and it's just like yeah. Not cool effect. He got what he was going after, for certain.
But I like that. I think I before I went into my diatribe about the setup, I really
this movie
like.
is terrible.
No, I wouldn't say that. No, I thought Danny did a really like the actor did a really good job like of going back and forth with his like finger character. I like the different voice he uses. I thought that kid was really good. And like the scene where he's like brushing his teeth and getting ready and talking to Tony and such, like I thought that kid was a really good actor, and so it was kind of we'll get in further into it. I thought it was a bummer that he kind of gets pushed aside as far as the major story halfway through.
I mean, they make a story related, right? Like he's in a trance or he's in shock, right? I know he's just rolling around a lot, but go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I don't know if I have an answer to that. I did write down when he sees the early on when he gets to the hotel and he first has his first shining moment, the silent scream that he does, and now maybe they cut the sound for the scream, but I was like, damn, this kid, and that's when I wrote shout out to BP, the king of haters of child actors, because like the kid absolutely delivers. I think, and I mean this is some. I always kind of wonder about this with child actors. Like, you know, you have a child actor in a romantic comedy and, I love New Dad or, you know, whatever. Like, how do you get a kid to perform like this in an intensely unpleasant horror movie without them being scarred from the production of it? Like Shelley Duvall seems to have been, you know? Like, how do you shield a kid that's... I don't know. He's probably Rumja probably around the age of your youngest.
Yeah, he's probably 6 or 7 in this. Yeah.
So I'm just like, I don't know. I'm very curious how you get that performance out of a kid without them being,
Well,
horrendously scarred for life.
I think the good news is that I don't remember him being involved with more of the really disturbing scenes. So
That's true.
He is getting chased in the snow at the end, but that's pretty easy enough. He doesn't
Just
need
run
to,
around.
yeah, just and then I
You're
want
having
you to
fun
do
in the
this.
snow.
Yeah, and you're getting chased by somebody. It's not he's not having a real visual reaction. And then when you're doing close up stuff, I mean, yeah, doing screams and such that are edited, you can just be just make a screaming noise.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
You're not really exposing him to,
We won't tell him that in reverse it's murder. We'll just say he's riding red rum.
Yeah.
And there's also 18 people standing around them, not just the cameraman and the kid, in that scary situation. There's lights and people walking around and people with
True.
Yeah.
True.
So I not to interject too much, but I was watching or listening to the commentary by the people that made Aliens, and Newt is in Aliens, and they James Cameron made a big thing. We had talks with her because she's going to be in the water with this creature thing, and we don't want it to affect her. But they had long conversations before that, so I do think they address that as much as they can. Now I don't know if Stanley Kubrick's crazy man.
I know. Yeah, I was kind of Kubrick's probably we're not going to do all that.
No,
it'd be better if he was truly terrified. Then we'd capture the art.
I'm glad you brought it up because I wouldn't have known how young this child was, but as a double father's on the cast, how hard would it?
Shotgun.
Well, both you being dads, I mean, could you imagine your kid being in a movie at the age? Because Harper's older than this now, right? If you so I guess you said your youngest is that age. Okay, Matt Jones, you have to go take him to the studio lot, and he's going to be in The Shining.
Yeah, it'd be weird. There's times where we've thought that our older one had theatrical. He kind of over exaggerates and he's theatrical with some of his mannerisms. But I would say no. I don't think he would be able to do this. So I don't know how these young kids how they do it. But this kid's younger than a Haley Joel Osment. Haley Joel Osment was probably closer to 9 or 10 when he was doing the Sixth Sense type of stuff. So a little bit older.
I have to think you have some sort of consultant or child actor coach on set that really helps get the best out of them, because they can't truly be aware of what they're portraying in the film without scaring them.
James Cameron said that he would draw a dot for her. I want you to look blank because you're so traumatized. So stare just at this dot and talk to that dot. Don't acknowledge anything else. And now that I watched that movie again, straight up, dude, she's just staring at some dot that he posted, and that was her motivation or whatever you want to call it.
Which movie
totally worked.
are you
Aliens.
referencing, Troy?
Aliens.
Oh, Aliens. Okay, it's been a long time since I've seen it.
Yeah, me too. It holds up. I still think it's really cool. And listening to the commentary with James Cameron, and a lot of the Marines are on there.
Michael Biehn.
Michael Biehn is on there, and
Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton is on there.
R.I.P.
Yeah, right. Anyway, I'm glad you brought that up, Jeremy, because I agreed. I thought you sent that text indicating that, you think he's a bad actor. I was like, I don't know, dude.
BP hates all child actors. He thinks they all are terrible. So I'm I actually, because of his criticism of child acting, I've sort of feel like I've almost become a connoisseur where I always think back to, if you guys have ever seen I Am Sam with Sean Penn.
I know the movie, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, Sean Penn plays a mentally handicapped. I don't know to what degree, I can't recall, but there's a little girl in the movie, and it's Dakota Fanning, a very young Dakota Fanning, and her performance in it is incredible. And so I always kind of appreciate when I can tell a kid really nailed it. And, I think the kid nailed it in this movie. Now, granted, editing and all this kind of stuff, there's a lot of close-up shots of his face.
But there's a lot of long takes too, and he's in when he's interacting with Jack Nicholson. I'm like, they won't cut. They will not cut. He just keeps on going on, and it's to your point. I'm like, I couldn't agree more. That has got to be so tough for
Yeah.
your youngest Matt to be like, oh no, can you just sit there and stare blankly and listen to him talk for like a minute and 30 seconds?
It's
You haven't seen my kids when I try and have a conversation with them. They could probably do that.
Okay,
It's-
good.
Dad.
it's also interesting to imagine. Like, could you imagine being a kid working on a movie and then you're like, but you're not allowed to see this. You
Oh
can't see
yeah, that'd be awful.
it. Like, I don't think this movie is that bad in comparison to like, I'd probably allow Harper to see this before Aliens. Personally, I think that would scare her more.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And
a
there's
child,
more
yes.
gore and all that kind of stuff too. But yeah, I mean that'd be an
Ghost,
interesting
though, man.
thing of like your kid's in this big movie. It's a big hit movie at this point, obviously beyond a cult classic. I know this movie's on a lot of people's top 10 all-time lists. Sorry, kid. Maybe when you're older.
Yeah, man, it's got the accolades like we were talking earlier, but yeah, I don't know. Like that is a really good question too. Like I saw Aliens at a much younger age, but it's very action based, and you don't see enough of the aliens to get really scared about them. But yeah, with the ghosts. But I think again, to your point, I think this is much more scary as an adult because of the human interaction and just like Jack
Well, I mean,
Nicholson, in
yeah.
particular, of course, is just oof. It's tough to
Right,
watch.
and I mean,
'Cause it's real. Very real.
what could be scarier than losing trust in a parent who wants to kill you? Like, I mean, I can't imagine anything that's more of a betrayal of like, human values. Like ghosts. Okay, of course, a ghost's supposed to scare me, and maybe it's going to try to kill me. No one expects their dad to try to murder him. So I think like the very conceit of like what he becomes in this movie becomes, and obviously, the spousal terror that ensues as well is right there with it. But anyway,
Yeah, horrific. So, well, wait, he goes into shock here? I guess he does. That early on.
is this where he's like does the shaking and he's like drool on his
Yeah.
mouth thing?
So this
Do you have a
might be-
timestamp for that?
I don't remember that scene at all. That's the thing. I remember like I was watching Room 237. They're like, you can see here's where the pediatrician comes in, and I was like,
Yeah.
wait a second, I don't remember that scene happening at all in the movie, and I thought I had seen maybe I'd seen like a reduced cut of it, or I don't know, but
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no. That's where he's brushing his teeth, and he starts talking to him, and he's like, he already got the job, and he's like, is there something wrong with that place? And I guess, again, to the whole point of like, what is The Shining? Is it described more in the book? Because, in one way, it's supposed to be a way to communicate with people. At least that's what The Simpsons, don't shine me. But at the same time, it seems to be more of a seeing into the future, not a communication thing. So, like when he's sitting there in the teeth brushing, he's seeing the elevator of blood, which I guess is prognosticating that something bad is going to happen, and that's what he goes into shock. So that's the shining power, but also talking to Scatman is a shining power, I guess. I don't know.
What do you guys keep calling him the Scat Man?
That's the name of the actor.
What do you mean?
The name of the
Like
actor.
Robert Scatman?
No, Scatman Crothers is the name.
That's
of the
his
actor.
name?
That's
Oh,
his name.
Okay. I thought it was a Simpsons reference this whole time. Okay.
No.
Or like, was he in the music video for I Am the Scat Man? Okay. Skidididabop.
No.
All right,
Well,
sorry.
now that we got
Sorry to
that-
derail. I was like,
No, that's
I
good.
didn't
We
look
now
at his
know.
name.
Now we know.
Is he the only person ever in the history of mankind to be named Scatman as a first name?
Is
Probably.
that his Christian name? Do you
I'm
mean?
sure there are other people that have been named Scatman, but probably not
After Scatman.
after Scatman Crothers.
Okay, so it goes into shock. The doctor prognosis. So I've got written down. So it goes into shock. The pediatrician comes over. Is like, it's not going to be a big deal. He'll probably not happen again. And then this is where we first get the indication of like the, domestic abuse, I guess, because she talks about Jack Nicholson dislocating his shoulder.
Okay, now I'm remembering the scene.
And
I
he's
did
been
not remember it.
sober for 5 months, but that incident, I have it written down much later, like happened years ago, or something. Like it happened a lot. So the
Yeah.
abuse happened years ago. He had still been drinking, and then what happened 5 months ago to make him stop? We never get told, right?
No.
So it's okay. So I just didn't miss something. All right. Well, I'm
Not
glad
that
we
I
talked-
caught.
Okay. So the timeline is hazy at best, and something else might be going on, or something else might have happened. So that's yeah, pretty disturbing. Okay. Okay, now I guess this is where they they forget Grandpa at the gas station, but this is where they take the family and they finally arrive at the Overlook, which is a cool name for a hotel, of course. Makes sense.
I've been to Estes Park and seen the actual Overlook hotel that Stephen King stayed at when he was like,
Ooh.
"Oh, I'm going to write The Shining based off of this hotel."
I remember
seen it.
going there as a kid, and like that was one of the first things my parents were like, "That's from The Shining," and I'm like, "What the hell's The Shining?"
Now don't.
But now it's cool. Now
Yeah.
it's cool because I've seen it. But
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I have no just on the family drive up. He's already acting kind of crazy, like just kind of staring off and all that kind of stuff. They do the tour. This is where they quickly wrote in. I wrote Indiana burial ground. I think that means Indian burial ground. That's funny. Snowcat, foreshadowing the use of that.
who doesn't want a snowcat after watching this movie? Like I've never seen one in
totally.
real life, but I'm like, that thing is badass, and I want one. I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm gonna do with it. It hardly even snows in Indiana anymore,
Yeah.
but I want a snowcat.
It's true.
Yeah. I like leave a trail of breadcrumbs to find your way out, or the maze, because this is where they do the maze tour. Meat locker introduction is during this scene. And then this is where, like, it for me, it played, and I remember the first time I watched it, it plays as, like, eerie, scary to me, because there's that high whine sound, but it goes in on Scatman, and this is where he first talks to Danny about the ice cream. And it's like, well, that wasn't scary, but it made me, like, uncomfortable. So this is where they talk about that, right? And what Jack and what's her name in the, not Shelley Duvall, of course. What's the character's name? That's so
I don't
funny.
remember anybody's names in the movie. To
Sally.
be honest.
Is it okay, Sally?
No, I'm just making it up.
Sally Duvall. They go on their tour, and he asks. I guess this is where Danny asks, "Are you afraid of Room 237?" Which is a documentary you said you watched, right?
Mm-hmm. Fun fact about
please,
that,
yeah,
at least according to the documentary and some reading I did, there is no room 237 in that hotel because the hotel owners supposedly were worried that no one would ever stay in that room again.
For the outside, because those rooms were made up.
Right, but like
Isn't
the
hotel
true
is based
hotel
off
at like Mount Hood or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't have a room.
facade shot. Okay. I
Yeah,
gotcha.
they
I
have
gotcha.
a real room that they wanted to use, and the hotel was like, please use a different room that we don't really have.
Okay, like floor 13. There's no floor 13s on
Right.
elevators.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Or on buildings, I guess.
So sorry, I just want to clarify one thing. So
Yeah, please.
the exterior of the hotel is the Mount Hood Hotel in Oregon, right?
I think so, yes.
But the basis of the book and story is based off the hotel in Estes Park.
Correct.
But there's nothing in the movie from the hotel in Estes Park. Okay,
No.
gotcha. All right, just wanted to
Which
confirm.
confused me when he was like, "Oh, there's the Overlook Hotel." I'm like, "Yeah." Wait a second, why does it look different?
Kind of doesn't look like that one though.
Yeah, and it's not. It is. That's the one the book is based off.
Okay. I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
No. Okay, they cut to 1 month later. Handheld track shot of Shelley walking breakfast all the way through the hotel, which is what you brought up earlier, Jeremy, as far as like the geeking out about the filming, like steady cam walking through this huge, which I thought was a real hotel. Apparently, they built a goddamn, excuse my language, kitchen set and everything like that you can walk through, like that.
Yeah.
Now thinking again, I don't want to watch it again because it's an uncomfortable watch for me, but I want to watch it now again. Like, wow, they did this on sets, like these long uncut shots walking through multiple. It blows my mind,
It's
man.
crazy.
The hotel lobby, the way the light shines in too. When they first come in on the tour.
Yeah.
Also, in
Of
room
course.
237, they called it out, but I just thought it was funny. The sheer hilarious amount of luggage they have. I guess that was
Yeah.
a Kubrick joke. That
Because they
just
come
had
in a
it
little Volkswagen Bug.
right, and there's just like there's enough luggage there that couldn't have fit in like a Suburban. So
Right.
I
Right.
thought that was good.
Very
I don't know
much
when
so.
it happens, and I'm sure we'll get to it, but like
Yeah.
Shelley Duvall obviously we don't see her hit Struck any physical abuse in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's safe to assume there has been in the past, the way she kind of has the sort of like someone who's been through trauma from her husband, who's constantly doting and trying to stay positive. And I wrote it at 32 minutes. I assume that's around where we're at.
Okay.
Shelley Duvall constantly trying to be positive. Quote, "I'll come back with some sandwiches." I feel like there's like a really awkward moment where she says, "I'll come back with sandwiches." I can't remember the exact context of that. But I just find it in the face of...
That's a little bit further down.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, just in the face of complete unpleasantness, and like obviously, even if he's just verbally abusive, she's still just, well, boys will be boys.
Right. No, I'd agree with that for sure. For sure. No, this is like, we're at the part now where like they're a month in and he hasn't really written anything, and like she's waking him up in bed at like 11:30. And it's like, now I'm thinking like, well, what the hell was he up drinking? But he's supposed to be sober and there's no alcohol, no beer, no TV, make Homer go crazy. So have the ghosts already taken him over?
Is that what he types on the typewriter in that?
In the parody, yeah.
That's very funny. Okay.
But so he's like he's waking up and he's like somebody that would wake up with a hangover would do. So the ghosts are infected. I don't know, but I have written down this is the most disgusting scene in the entire movie because he's eating like runny eggs and bacon with his hands laying down on his side in bed, and I'm just like, that's just horrifying to me. If either of you eat in bed, I don't know how you do it.
That was the scariest thing in the movie for Troy. How dare he eat that way?
Not sloppy food like that. That's for sure. I can't.
Bed. And
I drink water in bed. That's about it.
Sure. No, I'm with you. I'll drink coffee in bed. I'm not gonna eat. It's not even. I didn't even have a problem with the bacon. Like bacon aside, eating that with your hands in bed, like gross. On your side. Anyway.
On your side. I like how you called out him being on his side.
Well, if you sit up with a tray. Mm-hmm. I remember as a kid, like, okay, certain birthday, like, okay, you're gonna have like a breakfast
Mother's Day breakfast in bed, yeah.
But now as an adult, like, what a horrible idea! Like, just eat at the damn table.
Right.
Because now I might have to do laundry, and that's not a big thing. But
you're gonna find little like crumblies in your sheets for a while, unless you do laundry right away. Yeah.
Oh, I also have written down. This is where she's. We get introduced to the hedge maze, which is a huge part of the movie, obviously, but you kind of forget about it for big chunks.
Yeah.
Which I didn't understand that's not real either. It was made out of like wire and like intertwined branches and stuff like that, which is cheap. That makes me mad. And also the snow in the end is like salt, not real snow.
It looks cool though. I mean, like I find it convincing. And the lights. I think the lights in the maze are like the creepiest part of it too. Like, who would put lights like that in a maze?
Stanley Kubrick.
I don't know. I mean, if I was running that hotel, I'd be like, maybe we save a little electricity by turning off the maze in the winter. but again, this is the type of place that hires Jack Nicholson to come take care of things. So maybe that's why the lights are still on.
He also tells him, like, oh, the apartment's the only place that has power, but go explore the rest of it if you want to. Like, wait a minute, what? But then it has power, so I don't know. That whole intro is weird. There's a storm forecast in the kitchen. They do have television, which I think is cool, that they do have some outside world. And they talk to the radio guy, of course. Mm-hmm. More bike riding. There's an industrial fruit salad can that, like, for 3 people, why is she opening 64 ounces of fruit salad and like dumping it in a big bowl? Just like that grossed me out too for some reason. I don't know why. Now when you go back and watch it, you'll be like, yeah, she opens. I mean, sorry, I forgot on camera. Like, it's one of these big ass things of fruit salad. Like, that's what they're gonna have for
when
dinner.
You say fruit, like a fruit cocktail.
Yeah,
fruit cocktail. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
That was a staple when I was a kid.
Small ones. They don't have the small ones. Man, can you imagine though with the 64-ounce thing? All the like slurping the juice and stuff, how like you get such a sugar rush from that.
I think it's just the sheer quantity of it, because I don't have a problem with fruit cocktail. It's just when it's that much of it, it's just like whoa, like 3 people. Like I don't know what they're doing. Snow is coming in. This is where they establish that the phones are out. And now it's funny as we go through the notes pretty quickly now, 40 minutes in or whatever. Like not much seems to happen, right? It's a lot of long cuts, long takes, all that kind of stuff.
At 40 minutes, I have a note that says, "Is he a bad dad, or has he already turned heel?" I think we know he was already a bad dad, but
It seems for years now. So like, I don't know. Well, Matt Jones, this is my a place to interject. Like, is there any other stuff about that in the book?
I don't remember much of the book.
Okay.
Because it's been a while. I was reading up on the Wikipedia stuff about it, and why Stephen King was so angry about it. Mm-hmm. I think it's a lot like I think he was a drug abuser, if not like an alcoholic, as well. And
Stephen King.
Stephen King.
Oh, okay.
And I think he had actually like hurt one of his kids in a drunken outrage, and so like. He was writing a little bit autobiographical about that and like how he was kind of like working through his feelings and like how that like dark side of him could be brought out by external forces like drugs and alcohol. It's like, well, if you're in isolation, could the ghosts kind of act similar to that? And I think that was a big thing. So like I if I remember right, like he is not just straight evil at the very end. Like he is fighting the demons, but he also is still like he's not winning. So he eventually like sacrifices himself, and the whole like place blows up. The boiler room where she goes down, like Shelley Duvall goes down and like does something with the boiler room. I read up about it that like if you don't like release the steam in the boiler room, like the whole place blows up. And so that happens in the book. Like the whole place blows up. Damn. So and the dad's
quite a different
in there.
Ending.
Yeah, very different ending.
Classic blows up the whole place at end of movie trope.
The hotel is evil, so guess what? The hotel's gotta
blow it up. What else are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You gotta blow it up.
Yep.
And hearing something like that, I'd be like, oh, that must be what pissed Stephen King off. But it's not the drastic change in the end. It's the fact that the character was written as kind of like bad from the get-go.
That's the
movie.
I think he kind of wrote that thing as like an avatar for himself, and so for him to be like, this is the thing I kind of get into is that like, I think it sets up more of it to be kind of like an overall thing with, you've got Danny with the Shining, you've got Jack Nicholson who's struggling and going, dark side or whatever, and then like. At some point in time in the movie, for me, it feels like they completely forget about Danny, and it just becomes about Jack Nicholson and like how he just completely goes over the edge, like and how his acting gets like very crazy and out of control. And so like if I'm Stephen King and I'm like, this isn't quite the nuanced version of what I envisioned of my characters being done, I can see why he would be upset.
But a
lot of people find it like there's a lot of like stuff with Jack Nicholson's character, like people like it, and like clearly that disturbed people. But to me, that like Danny at some point, like I liked early on where he's like throwing the darts and he sees the girls. I like when he's riding his bike and he sees the girls, and then he has the flash of them being like dead and like chopped up, and then flashing back, and it seems like he's working through that, and then like he goes into room 237 and he comes out of it and he's got that like bruise on him, and she says like, what did you do to him? And like from that point on, Danny's basically just like he's not a character, he's just like under assault. Yeah, he's just under assault. And I was like really bummed about that. And then like at the very end, he finally escapes. He had some like cunning to like walk back through his steps, but like he doesn't really use the Shining to like get out of anything. I don't know, like maybe the Shining told him to like retrace his steps so he could get away. But I don't know. It seemed like it just kind of veered away from being a general story about three characters to just being a story about Jack Nicholson going crazy. and then the
Yeah.
people that he loves being terrified by him, which to me, I mean, I don't really like movies where kids are like under attack like that. I don't like that
Mhm.
I mean, in general, I never liked it, especially now as a parent. Um, and so like, but it's effective. I mean, I don't, it made me not feel good about his character. And if that's what they were wanting to achieve, then that's good. But I don't really like that. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if you all had a different take. I mean, the movie, like, maybe I'm misremembering scenes, but it does feel like, 45 minutes left in the movie. It's just all Jack Nicholson and the ghosts at that point in time.
Yeah, but
Because of the
okay. So
trauma, though. Like, sorry, but like
no, go ahead. Go
we're
ahead,
jumping
Troy.
ahead a little bit. But like, this is a good place to see if either you guys had done more research or the fan theories. But like, Jack Nicholson is the one that hurt him in that room. Like, Jack Nicholson was in there exploring or something, and he got like he caught Danny went in like startled him or something, and he got like a ghost didn't do that to him. Or do you guys interpret that as like no, there was a Danny let himself into that room and got attacked by the ghost?
That
Like
was what
I
I
think
thought.
he's
I thought that was the thing. I thought I may be misremembering the scenes, but I thought Jack Nicholson was sitting there like in some sort of a daze, and he's sitting there at his desk, and then in walks Danny with the bruises on him, and
well,
then
Shelley Duvall is
and
comforting him because he's having like a nightmare and screaming
yes, yeah,
that
yeah,
he killed them. But like I'm assuming that he already abused him, came back to the desk, fell asleep, and then he comes walking in.
well,
Unless the fan theories are saying no, it is a real ghost.
well,
Like
I don't know. When I was watching that movie, I was like, okay,
just a
well, I don't
ghost.
know if he did or didn't do this because the only thing you hear is, yeah, him like screaming. Then she comes in, and then she sees Danny come in, and he's
Right.
all bruised up, and then she takes him away. She's like, "You're awful, you're awful." And then, like 5 minutes later or something, she comes back and she's like, "Jack, you need to go to room 237. Danny went in there, and like, there's a woman in there or something like that." And that's when Jack Nicholson goes into the thing and sees the naked lady, and
Right.
then has that terrible like vision. So I didn't. It to me, it wasn't explicit that Jack Nicholson had done anything. It might be like I think that's up to interpretation. Is like, did he actually do it, or was it the ghosts, or I don't know.
I I personally feel like it kind of almost doesn't matter which if he did it or not because it's the whole point of it is to recollect the past trauma that he had hurt as child.
Yeah,
And now it's
That's true.
rearing its ugly head again as he's, as I previously stated, going full heel turn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my takeaway. I mean, that's a good point. I didn't really think about like, did he really do it? Did somebody else do it? Or again, does it matter? It's almost more the implication.
yeah, because most of the movie, I would have said, if you had asked me, I'd have like, well, it had to be Jack Nicholson because there are no like these ghosts aren't real. They don't actually impact anything
Except when
until
they unlock the meat locker.
when they unlock the meat locker, and then it's
Stupid
like,
fucking movie. This movie
okay,
sucks.
and then it's like, okay, wait a second, maybe they could have been the ones doing that, and so that does like throw my interpretation into like a little bit of I don't know what to believe anymore, which might be what they're going for.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, that was
No,
that part was like I saw that and I was like, wait, what? The ghosts unlock the door? Like that kind of. I know this is like I guess it's anything like it's a supernatural thing. So ghosts can unlock doors in supernatural movies, but up until that point, I think I was like, this is all just in their heads, and it's really eating at they're envisioning this, and it's driving them crazy because they're isolated. And then that happened, and I was like, all right, well, I don't know what to believe anymore. It
yeah.
could anything could happen. Why aren't the ghosts being, crazy, or why aren't they actually hurting people if they could unlock doors to get people out? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I actually like Jeremy's line there, but it's like it doesn't really matter. It's just more about like going insane and like maybe the claustrophobia or whatever it is. Like,
Hmm.
maybe he burst through the door with his strength, but like that's just how it. Obviously, this movie turned like it doesn't really matter. The fact is that he somehow got out to chase them. But
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
and we'll get to this. This might be jumping a little ahead,
rules.
but
no ghost
we're
rules.
we're meeting with the ghost bartender,
Yeah.
and the ghost bartender asks him some questions. And I wrote this line down. I love the little son of a bitch.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, I laughed out loud when he said that. I'm like, okay. Accident he speaks of is sad, and he aims to get sympathy from the bartender in a confessional to try to get someone to agree with his bad behavior. Was he always on this collision course regardless of the hotel? Does the hotel reveal who each person really is? That's like actually my only non-dumbass comment I wrote down. Because just minutes before, at minute 47, Shelley Duvall is wearing just an absolutely horrifying jumper, some sort of abomination of an outfit, and I just wrote down, what is she wearing?
Dude, she was like the original hipster, because there's people that wear that outfit all the time, like now. Like all of her outfits in this are very. You could see people wearing them in 2024.
It's making a comeback.
Billie Eilish would wear anything that she's wearing
That's right.
in a heartbeat, I'm guessing. So, we jumped around a bunch. Now we're getting
I'm
to,
sorry,
like,
yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. Like
This is a hard movie to stay on a linear path of like describing what takes place, because
It is.
early things allude to later things call back to earlier things. All of it, a lot of it's conjecture and theory too, so.
Well, and a lot of it is really good, like, setups. And, like, as far as, like, movie, like, setup and payoffs, like, okay, they established that, the phones are out because of this storm. Like, oh, no, we don't fix those until the spring. Like, okay, so we're not expecting her to go talk to the phone anymore. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, Jack Nicholson thinks about the radio, and we don't see him destroy the cat, but he tells her when he's in the locker, like, I'm in the cat. So it does a lot of, like, really good movie normal things, but, the lack of... There's just it really is like 3 characters for like the vast majority of it. So, and then to your point, 2 characters. Why it's kind of hard to talk about. So I don't know. And like, how much more do we really need to say about the points? More now, how kind of do we interpret it individually?
So my question here is this kind of came up in the documentary thing, and
Yeah.
that to me that documentary is a little bit Looney Tunes, but they did bring
Sorry,
up
real
like a
quick for
point.
the viewers, Ramjo, what's the name of the documentary?
It's Room 237.
Highly recommend anyone who's watched the movie recently watch that, because it's funny whether you want to go into that depth or not. I
is.
very much enjoyed it.
It is. I'm tepid on it. It was interesting, and then sometimes I'm just sitting there. I'm like, man, are you reaching for some? You're reaching
Oh no,
for,
yeah, that's half the
like
fun of it.
Numerology stuff. It's like, if you look at this number is actually this, which means this and this, and it's like, okay,
it's a little Da Vinci Code.
but like one of the things I'm interested in is like, okay, like there's that point in time eventually where suddenly like Shelley Duvall is seeing all the crazy stuff that like I guess Jack Nicholson, or he's seeing like a good situation, right, with the nice bar and the hotel guests and all that. Everybody's being very nice to him, and then she's seeing like horrifying things. She's seen some dude in a dog costume go down on a butler dude, or like, and I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. I don't know why suddenly she's seeing this. I don't know.
I have that written down too.
I do not understand any of this, and I'm probably just not. Maybe I'd given up at that point, but I was like, I do not understand what's going on, and why suddenly now she's seeing it, and why I don't know.
I mean, I might do a deeper dive now that we've talked about it, because, I mean, I'm wondering, like, again, I don't know too much about Stanley Kubrick, but is he a guy that has studio notes? Like, this is a horror movie. You need to be more scary. Okay, throw in some random ghost skeletons
No,
and party
I don't
clothes.
think so.
I think he's famously controlling
He is.
and does everything. At least the reputation. Maybe it's overblown, but from everything I've read about him, everything is a conscious decision. For instance, like in that documentary, they call out in this random scene. There's a poster about snow skiing, when they clearly state in this movie that there is no skiing at this resort because the winters are too bad or something. I can't remember. So, like, I think everything is a conscious decision. I am not a huge fan of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Never
I think
seen
it's wackadoo Looney Tunes in my opinion. But like this movie, there's a lot of good conversation topics to come out of it. I think, at least for me, there's some stuff that's almost red herrings in there just to go, what does that mean? Maybe it means something. Maybe it means nothing at all.
You've always
And
been
only-
here. Like, what the fuck
Yeah,
does that mean?
Stanley Kubrick is the only one that knows if any of it means anything or not, and now he's dead. So, yeah.
Alma, me and the ghouls are concerned that you're not getting it.
I had that recorded today to send to you guys because it's on the next clip of that, and that is also one of my favorite parts about that.
It's just so good. It's so good compared to the movie. I love it. You appreciate that. I'm glad I saw the movie just so I can appreciate that parody even more because it is so good.
You'll be much happy if you kill your family, I promise. Oh, you don't seem so happy. Oh, I'm very happy. Tra la 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 la.
Oh man.
So I mean, I guess, like, I mean, I'll just kind of go through my notes really quick, as far as like talking points, because we've talked almost through everything now, which is good. I mean, there's like a bunch of just eerie stuff, you know, long takes. There's a tennis ball where he's sitting playing or whatever, and that's like a ghost tennis ball, and that's where he goes in the first room 237. Dislocated his shoulder was 3 years ago. They finally give that date, but he's only been sober. You know, he even says like, you know, it's been a miserable 5 months, you know, on the water wagon or whatever. I do have, yeah, the water wagon. I think that's where that came from.
No. I'm just, that's a funny way to word being sober.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I'm on the water wagon now.
Well, because if you get off, you're off the wagon.
Right.
But
right.
nobody says water wagon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I just did because I think it.
Oh,
was
they didn't.
literally a
Okay,
water
I
wagon.
was like, I missed that in the movie, but I find that no, I like it. I think
Okay.
we should normalize water wagon.
Okay, we'll start using it. I do have sorry, Jeremy, Scatman. When it cuts to him, like just watching TV, and then naked Afro woman cuts to another scene in his apartment. Naked Afro woman. I'm like, yes, that's deliberate awesomeness that Stanley Kubrick is known. Like it's 4 out of 4 stars for me. I forgot that scene. I'm glad I wrote it down.
I want to know how he got that job when he lives in Miami, Florida. He just
The cook
goes out there. He cooks out there during the summers and when their season's open, and then he goes back to Miami, Florida during the winters with this giant naked Afro lady on the wall. And it's like, this is the
different
life
things.
I lead.
Oh man. So I have that, and then there's more high-pitched tomfoolery because this is where he sees the vision of what Jack Nicholson is going to do. Then we get, I think there's like the bathtub scene. I remember that just scaring the hell out of me when I saw it in high school, and I think to this day it's still pretty creepy because,
Oh, yeah.
as a heterosexual male, that is a very attractive female to me, especially when I'm like,
Full frontal nudity, which
Absolutely.
cannot. I mean, that is not common currently. Even I was like, whoa, we're seeing the whole shebang here.
surely.
I honestly that almost took me aback more than like whether she's attractive or not. Was like, oh, it's just full on nudity. It's very rare.
Oh, I was reflecting more back on like seeing it as a kid, like holy smokes,
Oh,
so
yeah.
hot, and then this like horror image to like immediately like, yeah, it's like now you're associating like this like hot sexiness with like this gross old, which happens to us all. So yeah, very obviously, I think that's one of the more famous after the elevator blood scene, which
I have
is
on my
almost comical nowadays. Go ahead.
I have on my other screen running right now. Have you guys seen Ready Player One?
I have not, but I've heard about what happens, and which is not in the book. This is not in the book, but I know.
No.
what
I read the
happens
book
in
as
movie.
well. I like the movie okay, but there's a whole, they go into different universes of different properties, and it's very much a fanboy movie. But there's a whole sequence that takes place within The Shining in the movie.
Okay.
And they recreate this scene that we're talking about right now in the movie where there's like someone goes in with their avatar and fight. It sounds ridiculous. Fights the creepy old lady. It's kind of like I
That is
can't
ridiculous.
explain it with where it would sound reasonable or why it would take place. But when we were talking about the movie, I was like, I'm going to put this on. Do I remember that scene right? That the old lady fights someone in a mech suit, and they do in fact. I did have in my notes though, in all seriousness,
Yeah.
in Hollywood, the creepy old lady. Obviously, there's prosthetics and stuff, but how. I've always wondered how, when you're playing a character that is unappealing, unattractive, overweight, whatever the case may be, how do you go about having auditions for parts to be filled like that? We need someone who's just ugly. Like, and if you're ugly, we need you down here on Saturday between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. Pacific time. Looking for the most whack-looking person. I don't know.
Yeah. That's kind of probably it.
We can't. We're not going to answer it on this conversation, but I wrote that down. Continue, Troy.
No lines required. And I did see the trivia
That is
pop
so
up on
funny.
this, that both the young actress and the woman actress one and only movie was this, and they did.
Oh,
wow.
They just
Interesting.
have to be naked coming out of a tub. Which is a good point, Jeremy. I didn't think about
One
all
and
the
done.
prosthetics that she's wearing on her like diseased looking, or not diseased, rotting body. Like, yeah, that actress, woman, whatever, had to wear that stuff for probably like hours and hours on end.
Oh god, yeah.
Which is crazy. Let's see. He goes totally crazy. He meets the other. It's like, so this is where, like, what's real, what's not. Like, this is where he meets the caretaker in the bath. Like, he goes back to the bar for the second time, and the party's going on. So, like, there's all these other spirits or whatever. He takes him to the bathroom, and he's the guy that killed his wife and daughters, apparently. But he's like a server back in the 20s that then became a caretaker in the 70s when this allegedly happened. But then he says, no, you've always been the caretaker. And then you see the picture at the end of him into the picture from the 1920s. So it's like, well, this is just all hogwash. So what's it really mean anyway? So I guess we don't really have to...
That bathroom was effing sweet, though.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the color
Yeah.
scheme and decor was so cool.
Not a real bathroom either, right?
I know. I'm disappointed now that you
set.
say that.
It's so crazy. Yeah, always been here. I even have it written down. It's nonsense. The red rum, which obviously is another very famous scene. Scatman on the lamb, going all the way out there, which is funny. And then we get into what we've already kind of talked about. This is the no TV, no beer scene where Shelley Duvall finds the all typed, like someone, they had some intern type all those pages, which is pretty impressive, like a pretty cool prop. I wonder if that still exists, like all the typed pages in different,
Yeah.
whatever that's called.
That'd be cool to
paragraph.
have, like, a single sheet of that, like, in a
Yeah.
frame or something.
Yeah.
But the Homer version.
I think I sent. We're to the part where I said you would text earlier. The red rum chase, red rum, and then the chase that ensues. Here's Johnny's scene, which I guess is another
Very
super
famous.
famous scene about this movie.
Supposedly took like 100 and something takes.
Something.
I don't know.
What did I it's some ridiculous number. Yeah.
Yeah, I read that Jack Nicholson was a volunteer firefighter at the time, so he like knew how to wield an axe better. I don't know how that applies to the scene. There's no fires, but maybe it's the axe usage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Breaking
using
down
the
doors
axe.
with axes. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
In case of emergency break glass.
And my axe.
Yeah, and my steel, my bow. Then the old axe to the chest, which again, very quiet, wandering through, and then this is where Matt Jones hates the movie.
That's right.
And well, you said it earlier, and I didn't have time to process it, but yeah, I mean, it's like a hopeless character. It doesn't make any, like, it doesn't really move the movie forward to have him come back, except for I do have a note written down here, and this is again movie plot reason only, but him getting killed is what gave Danny away, because he has the connection with him, and when he gets killed, he makes Danny scream, which gives his position away in the little metal box he was hiding in. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, it kind of has a plot device. Is that what you'd call it, Matt Jones? But to your point, yes, he really didn't do anything to help them.
Well, can I offer a quick counterpoint?
Yes, please.
And
I'd love to.
I think you all are right. Like, kind of, why did he need to come back? It's so he can die. But I will say, like, once we've reached this point in the film, we know that we're on a cycle of repeating what's happened in the past. Like, I think this is sort of established at this point. The guy killed his family way back when. New guy's going to kill his family too. What could possibly disrupt that or save? So you see the caretaker guy come back and you think, oh, he'll stop him. Maybe he'll get involved in like maybe there's a chance for the history to not repeat itself.
Instead of
and then for him to and then he just immediately dies. So like as an audience, you're like, oh, okay, we're in motion. Like it's not going to be stopped. I don't know. That's just from a hindsight ending, looking backwards. Maybe
it definitely gave me hope the first time I watched it, but then when you know it's gonna happen, it's like okay, like.
And that's the way I died.
I mean, to make it that much more of a bummer movie, I think it works. Again, back to that. What is the effect that the filmmaker is trying to do? Like make you uncomfortable, make you want to take your headphones off. It absolutely worked. He got me both times, and to make this more depressing, harder to watch. Like, yeah, this character that you like, that seems like a really groovy guy that made all the distance. He calls up the Apollo Creed's trainer from Rocky and Rocky 2 to get him a cat. Yeah, that actor. I don't know his name. I wish I did.
Wait. You're not talking.
No. Scatman calls up his buddy, who is also Apollo Creed's trainer in Montana, to get him the cat. It's a one tiny little scene, but I was like, I love that actor. He's great as Apollo Creed's. Yeah. Anyway, he has this long journey. Towel. He's driving in the tiny, or not the tiny, but he's driving in the ice. He sees a big wreck, like all this crazy stuff, and then just to get the axe in the chest.
Oh yeah. By the way, that wreck sequence looked horrifically real. Like you couldn't see anything, really but I was like, damn, did they make a whole bunch of people just wreck so they could just drive by it for the I mean, I was surprised. I've seen a lot of accident footage in my line of work, and I was like, that looked real.
I was very impressed. I'm glad I thought that too. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I forgot about that till you brought it up.
Yeah. But yeah, that's funny. Matt Jones is hating. Elevator blood.
This is 2 for 2. Rumja hating.
I know. Okay, now hating is a strong word.
I know. So,
I'm not in part of the internet where everything has to be terrible or incredible.
Yeah. Well, we can wrap real quick, and then we obviously just free talk about anything we want to talk about as far as the movie goes. But like, yeah, chase happens.
One quick thing while we're on the topic of the chase.
Yeah,
Red Rum sequence. Uh-huh. That knife is the fakest looking knife I've ever seen in a movie. Shelley Duvall's wielding it. That knife looked so fake. And maybe it's one of those, like, we're now seeing it in HD and all that, and like we're noticing movie props. But I wrote, wow, it says murder. What a twist. The mirror. What?
That didn't build. That's the other thing, is you hear about Red Rum, but it comes out of nowhere, where I think in the book it is like established earlier on. Okay. Like he says something about Red Rum. Like if he had, and I don't remember if he did it or not, but like if he had done something about Red Rum when he had his incident before they left.
Yeah, good call.
And then it comes over here, and then she sees it in the mirror. Like that would be a setup and a payoff. But this is just kind of like, it's just like Danny suddenly walking and saying Red Rum as Tony, which in this really weird, annoying voice, as opposed to Tony before, it was kind of really cool. And then it's just really strange. It's like, oh, okay, this pays off right away. We don't have any like concept of wondering what Red Rum is supposed to mean. You just see Red Rum. It's like, well, you could have just written murder on the wall.
I think there's some quick cutaways to Red Rum earlier in the movie, but with no context. We don't know who wrote it or anything like that. Okay. It's just like those real.
Is it like
quick,
his vision, his shining vision?
Yeah,
it says,
maybe.
Okay. Then never mind. I take it back.
And I can't remember where I saw it, but over the lots of things I read and watched today, there was someone who called out the fact that there's lots and lots of usage of mirrors and mirror imagery throughout the movie, even from the initial shot where there's that like cool float over the lake, like the water is reflecting, doing a mirror image of the sky, like alluding to, I don't know, maybe it's alluding to this eventual like thing. But I kind of agree. It's like Red Rum doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Murder means something, but aren't we kind of aware that murder is abound already? Like, is anyone really surprised that someone's trying to murder somebody at this point?
Well, the only other thing, I didn't even think about the mirror stuff, but maybe in his vision, he sees it through the mirror, so he's seeing red rum through his vision of.
Like that's his
Shining?
self-preservation, like, or something like that's
Well,
how he
no,
knows
no,
to
like,
like
that's-
run and hide.
Well, no, like isn't there a thing like in dreams where you're supposed to have to read stuff backwards in dreams, like allegedly? Like I think there's
Could
something
be.
about that, like as far as like what we think we know about dreams and stuff. So like, I don't know. I mean, the movie is complete garbage. 0 stars. No, of course not really. It's brilliant, but like I don't
remember-
think these questions have answers.
Yeah,
But it's fun to talk about them and try just maybe we could dig out that little nugget, but like, no.
Can we talk briefly about also the Jack chopping at the door sequence? Obviously, very
Yeah,
iconic
please.
and all that. I love, and it's funny. I wrote this down, but how the camera follows his
Yeah.
swing, how cool and intense that is. And I was like, while I was watching, I was like, this is what every jabroni does on Reels and TikTok now. Where they're like, whoa, camera zoom in.
Ooh.
Every single movement, the camera has to follow the person. And I'm like, is this movie why we have this now? I don't know. There's
Maybe.
so many cool camera movements in them. And like, I almost feel like even if you hate the movie, it's almost worth watching for that stuff alone.
Oh,
That was gonna be my conclusion. Is I do not like this movie, but do I recommend it? Yeah, sure. I kind of do. Because if you want to see a creepy movie, if you want to see like a horror movie that's not a slasher, if you want to
Yep.
see a more disturbing kind of horror movie, this is probably one of the better ones you might see. Even though I don't like it, and I have issues with it, but people clearly love this movie. So,
but it sucks. Like I'm reading my final notes. Like now, Shelley Duvall starts seeing ghosts that aren't accounted for. They never explained what a bloody elevator is. Like his daughters didn't have that. Like that he didn't kill his daughters in the elevator, so that's just a spooky image, which pisses me off now that I'm thinking about it more.
I know, but everyone knows that image, how
There's
iconic it is.
Who are all the cobweb skeletons? They don't say that he murdered everybody at a party in 1927, so these are just spooky skeleton
They're
cobweb
dead
party
now.
ghosts?
They're not alive anymore. They died at the
You
party.
talked about the blowjob pig, which is like, well, those people aren't ghosts; they're alive, and there's like some weird like sex thing. So like, is
Are
that-
they
I have to
alive?
confess, I don't know what you guys are talking about with the blowjob pig, so I kind of want to go
Oh.
back and try to find this. I
There's
don't remember that.
It's like a famous thing of where Shelley Duvall's running up some stairs and she looks and there's a doorway and you see this guy in like a dog costume and then he's like leaning over and he gets up and then like up comes at the same time like a butler looking dude and he looks out
Oh.
and then they like start coming and then
I
Shelley
mean,
Duvall
it's-
runs away.
It's a furry
he's
convention. They
wearing like
happen
a-
at every hotel.
like a pig horror mask thing. Like,
Well, I thought that was
Okay.
a dog mask. But it could be a pig.
Oh.
I don't
Okay.
care. It's some sort of a furry kind of
Sure.
thing, but not.
it's just
Don't come after us, furries. Not that kind of furry. But I'm just
No.
saying that
Yeah.
he's just in some sort of cosplay as some sort of an animal.
and it's
So,
a weird, but it's like it doesn't link up with the 1920s ghosts. It's like
No.
1970s Coke ghosts. I don't know.
yeah,
like,
it's really weird.
so meaning where it's like, all right, all that with like this crazy character study of like this like abusive person, like it's a whole.
I feel like we've
hogwash.
talked you into hating this movie more. Maybe you did. and
I don't
didn't
hate this
believe-
movie.
No, not
I don't-
you, Jeremy. I'm talking about Troy. I don't know if we've talked you into disliking this or getting more frustrated or not.
Well, I think I talked myself into thinking it was something more than it is, which I would say like an absolute beautiful masterpiece of like cinema making or movie making or whatever. I'm not a movie maker, but like everything about it is like magical. Like the visuals, the fact that they fooled me into thinking that this was an actual hotel when it's really not, and I still can't think of how they did that. The fact that we haven't even talked about really Shelley Duvall's performance, where like she makes me like short of like breath the entire time. I'm just like, she's just exasperated the entire time, and then you read stories like, you know, she had to cry the entire time, so she was like dehydrating herself and like all this like weird intense shit, and then you're saying like abusive director, and all this stuff. So it's just like, as far as art, film as an art form, like it's a masterpiece. But as far as a movie that makes you feel something, it made me feel miserable. I was dreading doing it, and now thinking about like all the like the unanswerables was like, well, don't worry about it. To Jeremy's point earlier, and that's the best way I've made myself feel better about the movie. Is like, does it really matter? Like, and then you'd explain to Matthew, I was like, no, this is a story about the author that wrote the original book hurting his kid on accident, being an abuser, and then like substances and, you know, domestic, and him dealing with it, and the monsters that it brought up. Like, okay, now I don't have to think about it as anything more. So I don't have to worry about the pig blowjob thing. It's like, whatever. It's just a spooky image, and it worked because we still talk about it and the blood of the elevator. So, I don't know if I recommend it still, but
I have two comments I want to make. Number one, I didn't get to the Jurassic Park reference, but Danny runs and hides in the kitchen, and he tries to go into a cabinet and can't shut the door.
Yeah.
And can't get the door to close. And I'm like, there's no way that happened in Jurassic Park by accident. So,
good call.
Number one,
right.
We didn't talk about Shelley Duvall's performance a ton. I will tell you personally, I find her to be very obnoxious in this movie. I find her to be someone who is acting in a way that is not how real people act. I'm fine with it. She also has a very distinctive look as a human being, which is I've often wondered, is that a intentional casting choice? Like, she is a straight R.I.P. in all respect, but she's kind of an off-putting looking person.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if off-putting. She's unique looking. Is that
she's unique looking? Yeah. Sorry, that's a disrespectful way to say it.
Yeah.
But the elephant in the room that no one has talked about is Jack Nicholson is the reason why the movie. I don't know. Argue if as you may around it, does the movie work or not, but like, his performance is absolutely bananas and stunning and crazy and cool and interesting, and like when he stares out the window and he does the eyebrow thing, and like there's
the
so
old
many
Kubrick look.
There's so many crazy facial expressions he makes. I had in my notes also, there's a scene where he says the N-word for virtually no reason.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that doesn't make his performance better or worse, but
it's because the butler says it first, or the original caretaker.
That's
He's
right.
like, the scat man is coming. He's like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the only time that's dropped.
But the movie hinges on his performance, and I can only kind of almost understand why the third act switches into Jack Nicholson mode, because it's like he is fully unleashed, full unhinged. The here's Johnny, that like everything. There's a scene that I wrote down, and I wish I could remember exactly. You know, he's locked in the walk-in freezer fridge thing, and he says he does a little lick of his lips and does a little thing on the door that he's stuck in. I don't know if you remember that. It's just a little teeny detail that he adds, and the movie is so full of Jack Nicholson little nuance things that are probably not in the script. He's ad-libbing. Stanley Kubrick's like, do that again. I like that you did that thing. I think it's his movie. At the end of the day, it's Stanley Kubrick and Jack Nicholson's movie, and it's an absolute like all-timer performance for me of just complete manic bananas. So I don't know. That was kind of the last thing I wanted to say, is just he's just so watchable. Every scene that he's in, whether he's being an awful human or not, is so fun to see him. Like, it's like watching a guitar player rip off like a crazy solo. In terms of an acting performance, he's probably having so much fun too doing this part.
Well, and for our generation anyway, like, he was obviously in tons of movies before this and tons of movies after, but like, for the ability to still, having seen it now 3 times, to kind of forget that it's Jack Nicholson, and, you know, everyone does impressions of Jack Nicholson. Like, no, it's just some jerk that's like abusive verbally and physically to his wife, and like you hate this man, and like, I mean, just a quick interjection. Like, I can see how Shelley Duvall might be obnoxious to others or interpreted that way, and I don't know. I think the more I see it, the more I guess see the nuance of it, and I would get kind of caught in her performance too. But
some of it's the way she's written too. To be fair,
Well,
Sure.
I thought she acted that way. She is that she is somebody that's like, I have been through so much with this guy. He's hurt my son, but I'm really trying to make this work. He's brought me up to this remote hotel so that he can write, and maybe this is going to be the thing that's going to turn everything around. It's going to turn him around. You know, he had a bad incident 3 years ago. He's finally given up the booze, and so yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and stick this out, and I'm gonna be chipper about it. I'm not gonna be Debbie Downer about it. I'm gonna really try and give it my all. And so when he like is abusive to her, she's gonna try and like kind of grin and get through it, and then he just goes off the deep end, and he's just terrifying, and that becomes kind of like her thing. It's like, I'm just terrified at the world around me because this is clearly falling apart, and I need to get out of here.
It has been for years now, and
Yeah.
and I actually kind of agree, Jeremy, but only in the respect of like, because we have no character development we never see them as a happy family unit at all.
Yeah.
So like my problem with that character, and I would agree with you, Jeremy, except for this third time when I watched it, when I was like really into her character, is like, why is she with this guy? Like, what did she ever see in him? Like, he treats her like garbage from the get-go, and not even just like abusive garbage, just like, I couldn't care less about you. I'm not even really acknowledging you that much.
Yeah.
Like in the car or anything like that. So it's like, well, that didn't. But now listening to Matt Jones, of course, again, awesome thing about this show I'm finding for myself is, yeah, they didn't develop it, but that could be the reason why that she's acting this way, and there isn't that there because there's so much broken history that this is like the last ditch effort of like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and one thing to add to that too, to Matt Jones' point as well, is women at this time period were not allowed the agency that they are today. And I know this isn't like that long ago, but I mean, I would guess if this takes place in 1970, 1975, maybe even 1980, that was still a time where a lot of women didn't work. And so like to just like walk away from an abusive relationship might not be as easy as it is today for a lot of relationships.
You're totally right.
You know, just to give her some credit there, because like, you know, I don't know what that would be like.
Yeah.
But I will say you are 100% correct that this is really Stanley Kubrick and Jack Nicholson's movie, and I don't know if that's by design, if that's what came out of like, well, this is this is the stuff that's interesting to them. But yeah, no, this Jack Nicholson is totally off the wall, and he does a great job of acting like a guy that's completely gone over the edge. There was what I have an issue with, and maybe it's just like, well, this is madness and there's no understanding it. It's hard to understand what like drives him there. It's hard to understand the motivation, other than it's just like, well, it's isolation, it's a creepy old hotel, and there are ghosts there. Like, that's the kind of thing that I'm like, I wish I understood more. That's why, honestly.
But you have to, but Rumja, you have to kind of consider at this point the ending of the movie. He's pictured in this photo from 1920 whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, there is a cyclical nature.
I forgot about that.
And I don't know what it means. Like, I've read a lot of theories of what it means, but there is some sort of like, is he reincarnated as the same person that keeps getting drawn back to the same place? Or is it some sort of cyclical loop where he's a descendant? Or I don't know what this, but there is something to that ending that must draw his character there in the first place for whatever reason it is. A quick aside, he's listed as number 25 on the AFI top villains of all time, right behind Gordon Gekko of Wall Street. I just thought that was a fun fact.
Never seen that movie either.
I haven't either.
It's put it on the list, Troy.
If it's when it goes to the $5 Club,
It's
Good
probably
old Ollie Stone.
1987.
yeah. No, yeah. awesome performances all around. Like I said, I agree with, like I said, I think the Danny thing was great. Like I finally really got into Shelley Duvall's performance this last time I watched it. I don't know when the next time I'll watch this movie is, but
Sounds
yeah.
like never.
Never.
I mean, I know, like I said, and I said, it's been a really great breaking it down, talking through it, because it makes me think about it in completely different ways. And so I'm just now thinking Jack Nicholson, like, well, I wasn't even thinking, for whatever reason, like how much this had to do with his, sobriety and alcoholism and stuff like that. But that now I'm seeing for the first time, like, he's not going crazy when he's like yelling at them. He's imitating what he was when he was intoxicated and abusive towards them. It's like, okay, that's a whole different thing I didn't even see. But now if I ever rewatch it, like, okay, yeah, because he's completely irrational. Like, you interrupt me and all this stuff. Like, what a drunk ass person would say to his wife. That,
Yeah.
like, why are you yelling at her like this? Like, it's not the ghost. It's he's getting drunk on whatever. It's like, so that's another layer that we didn't even talk about that now I'm finding from the movie that sucks, because the picture at the end is just stupid. I would infer that just means like humans we can be pretty bad, we can be pretty destructive, but we also can have the shining or whatever. So yeah, that picture's stupid. What a stupid ending. It's crap. 2 out of 4 stars. Half recommend.
I like, the thing is that the cool thing about the movie is, like, you can hate this movie and still find it to be really interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
And and like,
I can't believe
I'm not like
an hour and 30 minutes.
I'm not editorializing to
already.
you guys, but I'm just saying, like, regardless of, if you walk into this movie and you watch it, you will not be bored and you will have some sort of opinion. And I have to say, like, after starting the Blue Beetle the other night, that godforsaken piece of trash movie, like,
It's a superhero movie, right?
yeah, it's the most toast, like, whatever, who cares, why does this exist movie. And so I like that The Shining exists, even if you hate it, because it's interesting and it's different. And I like, when I think about it, I'm like, what movie would I compare this to? Like, there's really nothing like it. There's a lot of
Event
unpleasant
Horizon?
movies. Yeah, that'd be a good comparison. I mean, and like, there's some corollaries with other Kubrick movies, but like, it is very much its own movie, and I appreciate that about it a lot. And I would recommend anybody see it, just because it's kind of like one of those, like, form your own opinion. You'll have an opinion. You will not be like, yeah, it was okay. Nobody says The Shining was okay.
Do you
was
think
fine.
it's like
It was fine.
to your well, I think it's crap. Most overrated movie ever.
To what movie? This movie?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
No, it's certainly not because of the Simpsons is like one of the favorite jokes now, reflecting back, like how dead on it is. We've talked about it now for 5 times already. But when you said earlier, Jeremy, like, you don't really know what time this takes place in, I absolutely agree. I was able to get lost in it. Like, do you think this is a timeless movie? Like, I don't think your kids would watch it nowadays, and I wouldn't want you to subject them to it. But like, do you think 18-year-olds now in college are watching this movie like we did, or like
At
I
least
did, I
in
guess, when I
film
was in-
classes, like, I think
okay,
this is a
okay.
movie that'll be studied for a long time, personally.
But this
There's
was
a lot of, and I, like, I'm not like some cinephile that know, I'm like some amateur jabroni that like watches YouTube videos and hears other people talk. I'm a big movie fan, so I don't know anything from anything, but like, yeah, I think this is an enduring movie that I think should be studied. Like, think about the horror movies that were coming around at this time period too, like
1988.
Friday the 13th, Sleepaway Camp Part 7, slasher movies. There wasn't a lot of like really heady horror. I mean, I'm sure there are examples, but it wasn't. Horror movies were more like fun at the movies, silliness, and I have to think this has to be one of the earlier examples of a horror movie that like sort of is trying to make you think about things a little bit. I don't know. You can argue whether it's even a horror movie. Maybe it's not even a horror movie. I don't know.
I think it is, and what I was going to jump in and say is it's cool to think that, like I said, I probably saw this in 1999 or 2000. I didn't realize it was only 20 years old at that point. I would have thought it, to her point, as like, it's a movie made in the 72 or 73, it's like all these old people. But it was shown to me, wow, and why we talk about the show and bring up the show. Like, a movie has to be 30 years old to watch this. So this movie was not 30 years old the first time I saw it, but I would have totally thought it was. Anyway, it was shown to me in this group of friends of like movies to try to scare each other. Like, it was shown as a horror movie. Like, this movie is so creepy when the bathtub scene and when this happens and the blood. So it was definitely shown as like a shock. It's going to scare the hell out of the movie, and it did. And it, I mean, for me, at that age, I was probably like 16, 17, 18 years old. So
Yeah. Just another kind of random thing to pull out of it too is I really enjoy when movies try to avoid placing their. Man, I cannot get these headphones to sit right on my head if I just want one ear open. That's why I keep fiddling with them. But Christopher Nolan is masterful in this regard too, where you can't. Sometimes there's cell phones, but there's very little technology in his movies, and he makes it very ambiguous of like when it takes place, and I think that like keeps them fresh and will make them endure long term to not feel dated. So I always appreciate when movies are able to pull that off.
Yeah, it's real challenge, especially things are shot so much differently, and I mean technology, like people shoot so much digital stuff nowadays that it looks different on the screen, period. So it's easy to date something. It's like, well, movies didn't. It's hard to make a movie from 2022 look like a movie from 1980 unless you're Quentin Tarantino, in which case he does because he has the backing for it. But yeah, I don't know. Anything else on The Shining? I mean, I can cut this wherever to post it, but I don't know, man. Last thing I'll say is like, cool that it came out of left field because of Shelley Duvall, and I was going to ask you to do the dead celebrity Shelley Duvall thing, but we didn't say anything about her.
Gone.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Can I bring up one funny Shelley Duvall moment?
Of
I know
course.
we're trying to close this out.
Not really. Whatever.
Wendy realizes. Yeah, I wrote that down, and the whole time we've been like, "What's her name?" And she's like literally listed in my notes as Wendy. She discovers that the snowcat has been disabled. Do you guys remember that?
I remember. Yeah.
And she picks up something.
Thing. Yeah.
A thing. Wendy picks up the quote-unquote thing that has been disconnected from the snowcat, is very worried, but also hilarious because that part could be anything, and there's no way she has any idea what it does.
No,
I thought that was very good. It's like the total like, well, oh no, we're doomed because the canoe valve's been disconnected. Like, I don't know. I thought that was funny.
I guess visual representation of she can't escape, and not having her like do a the battery.
Yeah,
Oh, did he
the
take
audience
the battery
knew.
out? Oh, the battery.
We all knew what was going on. Like we all thought, oh, that part looks really important. There's no
Stanley,
way
how
the
are we gonna shoot
snowcat can
this?
run without whatever that is.
Put a little
Turns out
gimmick
that
on
was
there.
just the AM radio of the snowcat. She could have gotten on there and drove off the entire time.
Is that one of the rumors and whatever you said you watched, Jeremy, on that documentary? Oh, speculation and fan theory. That's so
Troy,
That
watch
thing
the
is
documentary.
crazy.
You will not believe some of the stuff that the people have come up with from this. That's half the fun of it. Is just like, man,
I'll
there are
probably
some
hate the movie
huge
even
nerds
more.
out there that worship this movie and want it to be about all sorts of things. There's the Holocaust is one of them. This is apparently potentially an allegory for the Holocaust. The one that actually holds a little bit of weight for me is the genocide of Native Americans.
Yep.
And I think there are some ties to that in this once you see that referenced. The moon landing being faked and all that, not a chance. But there's lots of interesting things like, for instance, Danny's watching a TV that is clearly not plugged into anything. I never noticed that before. But you see the scene, and that TV is just in the middle of the room with no wires.
I liked the fact that like when Jack is sitting there and then the general manager comes over to talk to him, he's reading a Playgirl magazine, and it's like this puts it down in the middle of a hotel lobby. He's reading a Playgirl magazine, and you can tell, oh, that's a Playgirl. That's right. So it's just
I
weird.
missed that. Wow.
But you don't see because you don't. It's in there and out so quickly. You
Yeah.
don't see what he's actually looking at. But when you slow it down because you have, your Blu-ray player, you can see he's reading a Playgirl magazine.
And then like, did you see the part where
I
in the
hate this movie
credits
so much.
when
More and more every
the
minute we
credits
talk
is
about it.
it says directed by Stanley Kubrick and supposedly his face is airbrushed in the clouds.
I saw that,
I
and then they
stared
slowed
that.
down, and I was like, I can't see it.
I was like, I don't see it, but they were like, it's clearly there in the clouds, and I'm like, all right.
If you say so,
Um,
man.
So I mean, this is like, and imagine this is. It's so funny because you could probably do this kind of documentary about hundreds of movies that people are obsessed with.
It's the loose change of Stanley Kubrick movies. If you
It's the
know
loose
it.
change of this movie.
That's right.
Like I said, Clockwork Orange is like page for page. Like when I read the book, I was like, oh my goodness. And then when I saw the movie after, I was like, no, it's like literal page for page, like ripped out.
Yeah.
Like it's unbelievable. So I've seen.
What's the loose change? What's that mean?
Oh, it's the 9/11 movie about how 9/11 was like an inside job. And so
Oh, okay.
Jet fuel can't melt steel beams. I think that's from Loose Change. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh no, I thought you just meant like it's so like kind of like abstract. You can kind of interpret it any way you want. So just make it look weird. Okay, well, yeah. That's my thing. Is like he just seems like a movie hipster for this movie. And like, I just want to make something cool. And then
Yeah.
then let other people like decide it later. Like
Yeah,
unless he's on record saying something, like it's just art.
I totally believe that there's some things in here that have no meaning whatsoever, and he
Okay.
threw it in there to be like, people will wonder what that means. Well, like
I
we'll make this chair turn around backwards for no reason.
I love
What
how
does it
one,
mean?
One of
Whoa.
the things is like if you look at this scene, Jack Nicholson's in there and there's a chair in the background, and then they cut to Wendy and they cut back to Jack Nicholson and the chair is gone.
I got
like,
that.
And they're like, well, now Stanley Kubrick doesn't do things mistakenly, and I'm like, that crazy man films things like 60 times. Like there is an absolute possibility that the chair got moved and they came back for reshoot,
Yeah.
and nobody caught it.
They
for
claim
whatever
that
reason.
he's impervious to continuity errors. Like,
Like,
come on, there's
no.
no director out there that's never made continuity errors.
Yes, there's absolutely continuity errors.
So the funnier thing is like I'd love to hear a theory of like why was the chair moved? The ghost steal the chair or something?
The chair was never there. It's all about perspective, Jeremy.
And
It's
when
the
you
mirror
have it
thing.
so loosey goosey, you can literally interpret it anyway because no one can tell you like, no, it's absolutely this because
Right.
of this. Like, well, I kind of see it this way, but so maybe it's the best movie ever. I don't know, but
That's
it's
cool.
hard-
I mean, that's a cool thing that builds the mystique over time too. Like deceased director, well lauded. Am I using that phrase right? Lauded is positive acclaim.
That's correct.
I mean, you got like kind of all the elements of a cult classic there, and with questions that can never be answered.
Okay, so I do have one more thing about Room 237, and I saw it in the trivia or the notes about
I'm glad
it.
you enjoyed this movie so much.
It is so funny. So like one of the things is like if you look at the key for Room 237 when Danny goes in and you look at it, there are only 5 big letters in there: ROOM and N. And what are the only 2 words you can spell with that is room and moon. And so that's why it's about the moon landing. and so that was funny in itself. And then somebody else comes in because the O in like room number, the O is small, so it's not a big letter. So somebody else said, well, that also forgets the one other word you can spell with ROOM and N, moron. Like, oh, got him. Oh man, I laughed so hard when I saw that. It was beautiful.
yeah, I mean, I almost want to watch that just to see like these dumbasses talk about.
Oh,
stuff.
you
And
should.
That's half the fun, I guess. Like people are passionate about stuff. I can dig it. I didn't take that away from that at all. It was like beautiful to look at. Awesome use of steady cam and long shots, which I appreciate as an old man that doesn't like stuff that's flashing. And yeah, just like a really scary tale because this is like what real people have experienced with familial abuse and stuff like that. Where it's like, oh man, and it's like it's when again back to my first time watching it. This is scary. There's creepy stuff in it. It's going to creep you out. Like, ooh, yeah, it is. But it's the underlying stuff that happens. Like, no, that's totally what the real fear of it is. And it seems like Stephen King. So that's cool. I actually linked up with what Stephen King was getting across because all I hear is that he's a cocaine-addled like writes just crazy nonsense bullshit, which I've never read.
Some
I've
of
never
it can.
only The Running Man, which is amazing, and The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, which is a great little book. But
love The Running
haven't
Man
read
so
any of his
much.
books. Yeah, it's a wonderful book. Wonderful, wonderful book. Totally different from the movie, though. That's for sure.
Supposedly, it's being made like a faithful remake is being
Huh.
made,
Okay.
like true to the book, not to the Arnold movie. Anyway,
Yeah.
So I have kind of going back to a little bit of what Kubrick does. It's like I don't understand it. I'm trying to think if there are any movies that I've seen that are more like, I don't want to say like vibes movies because I don't think that's the right word for it, but more like obtuse. Like one of my favorite movies is Ashes of Time, and that is a very like kind of obtuse movie, and like you kind of like those are the movies that like you put probably more of yourself into it than maybe what the movie is actually there, and that can be good. Like a movie that can like you can put yourself into it or you can see something in it that maybe other people will be like, I don't understand how you see that in it. Like I'm trying to think if there are that many movies that I enjoy that are like that. It's like this movie is like a lot of it's like, oh, like the people that get really into it because they're seeing things that like they're putting themselves into this movie and seeing things that probably aren't there. I'm trying to think if there are that many movies that are like that, and I don't know if you all have any examples of movies that are like that.
two that I would reference: Donnie Darko
Okay.
would be one that I feel like when we were in college, that was a hot movie to analyze and whoa, what does it all mean?
Yeah.
And you can kind of enjoy it at its surface level as well. The other more recent that I think ties more directly to this movie and honestly maybe a better made movie is Hereditary.
Oh yeah.
Which is a deeply unpleasant horror movie. I will say it is not a pleasant movie, but it is a masterpiece in my opinion. And it deals with familial trauma tied in with horror. There's a substantial amount of unpleasantness in that movie, but I think it is unbelievable, and it has an ending somewhat similar to this, where you're just like, what does that mean? So that'd be like, I don't know if that answers your question, Rumja, but
No, that
that'd be
does.
2 recommendations for anyone that's looking for something somewhat similar.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what did you? What was the first one?
Donnie Darko.
Oh, Donnie Darko. I only saw that like once or twice when it first came out, like on video, and I remember thinking it was cool just because of like, I don't know, the atmosphere, the mood of it. But like the whole like twist ending was popular, right? Fight Club was around that time, Donnie Darko, and then Memento, and it's like, oh, did he really give his wife the insulin shots or did he not? Ooh. So I remember like that being kind of a thing that you want to talk about it right after and you want to watch it again. But that's kind of like stopped, I guess. So I don't know. But those are the only 3 that I can think of if that's what we're talking about. But doesn't really link up with this because it's not like a shock ending to this. It's just kind of like a how you interpreted.
Yeah, it's
the
it's
ending-
one that
The ending
like,
is cut and dry.
movies
He
that-
dies in the ice.
Yeah,
Like
but
how did he go
movies that
crazy?
you
Were
have
the
that are
ghosts?
more atmosphere and kind of like I don't understand what's going on, but I am putting kind of I'm giving it the movie meaning that
Creeped out by it.
that you may be creeped out by, but like you're giving it meaning, and somebody else would come in and be like, I don't understand. Like somebody comes in and watches this movie, right? And they don't think about like, oh, this is clearly somebody that's dealing with addiction to drugs and how like it's impacting his life. Like Stephen King wrote the book about that. I think that was like a major driver of it. But like somebody comes and watches this movie and may not see that, and Stephen King does, right? So like are there movies that are like that are less formed and on like plot and structure and are more
Yeah.
about things you can put into them? So I don't know.
One that just came to mind is Inception. I mean, obviously that's not thematically like in terms of the storytelling of the movie, but like obviously everyone's debated did the top fall down or not at the end.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that ties in as directly to what your
Say,
example
like,
was. So
maybe Terry Gilliam movies like Brazil. If you've ever seen Brazil, which
I've never seen Brazil.
it is it put me in the same place as this. Like I don't like how I feel now. Like you don't really know, and it's all about like Big Brother and like big government and stuff. It's like it's a. I was expecting like a good old fashioned romp, like Monty Python or something. Like, no way, dude. It is like a heavy fucking movie. And he also did 12 Monkeys, which I did finally get because that was a $5 club. We can't
12
watch
Monkeys.
that until 1996, but that's also like, so what? They caused the virus. He was preventing the virus. Like, Brad Pitt was a good guy, but he was the son of the guy that created the. I think it was like a virus. So that's another movie. It's like, well, what are you interpreting? Like he was time traveling? Like I don't know. But now we're just talking about like fuck Terry Gilliam films. Like
Mulholland Drive is another one I just thought of too.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah,
I still don't know if I understand what happened in that movie.
that's a good one.
At the time, I thought I did, but I probably didn't.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. Is Brazil within the window potentially in the
Oh,
future?
yeah.
Because I've never seen
in
it,
the
and I've
80s.
always wanted to.
It's early
It is,
80s.
and it's I've got the five. It's a part of the $5 club.
Okay.
Ooh.
I've just heard it's wacky, and I know Terry Gilliam is wacky.
It's well. Here's the thing though, Jeremy. It's wacky in the beautiful filmmaking way. Like it'll blow your mind how like much in camera stuff that he does in this. It's. I mean, as any Monty Python, like I still look at Monty Python like their paperwork. Like, how the fuck did they do that? Like, how did they do that? So like, in that regards, just like this, beautiful, but subject matter and like what it makes you feel about as a human being and like what we do to each other is like. What a bummer movie, man. But Robert De Niro is in it, interestingly enough. He
I remember
plays like a
seeing it at the
cameo.
video store, just thinking, "Yeah, that looks weird. No thanks." It's called Brazil, and then the cover art looks nothing like the country of Brazil. So
Nope.
I'm out.
And you want to talk about...
I want my Brazil films to be about the country of Brazil.
Yeah.
Does it have anything to do with the country of Brazil?
It's about Brazil, Indiana.
Jets to Brazil. No, what a wacky ass movie though. So
Well, good times.
What are we watching next? Do we have a decision? Were we going to try to do the Sting, or do you guys want to make it live and just decide now?
I'm cool with the Sting.
I'm fine with that. Could be
Okay.
a good palate cleanser after this movie.
Completely different. Have you guys seen it? I can't remember.
I've seen the Sting.
Never seen
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Very adjacent to Butch Cassidy. Now that I've seen Butch Cassidy, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like spoiler alert. If you enjoy Robert Redford and
Paul Newman.
Paul Newman, you're probably gonna like this movie also because they're just fun to watch together. So
Yeah. And whatever the song is it the Entertainer that they keep on playing over and over again?
yes,
Yeah. You gotta like that song.
I do like that song.
All right,
It's
good.
an original song written for that movie. I have no idea if that's true.
I'm gonna
Probably
try to
not.
end.
It's probably like a really old song.
Do we before I try to end the recording? Do we have anything to say? Deuces. Well, you have to present your stream. Yeah.
Thank you,
present the-
StreamYard.
All right. Let me cut this. And
All
if it
hail the duck.
if it disconnects us, awesome talking with you guys. I can't believe we. What a great conversation about the movie. I was not expecting. I was dreading this for sure. So if it disconnects us, great. If not, we'll see.
And what up?
And,
What
yeah.
up?
When last we left our hero, she was all alone, unbuttoned blouse, empty house, and a stranger on the phone, familiar voice. Cops trace the call, almost free to turn the key, but then